In winning the national championship this year with UConn, Stephon Castle showed that he has the ability to provide a major supporting role in an elite system, providing great value as an offensive connector at the two-guard position and a defender for a powerhouse squad that had so much talent that it was hard to stand out. Castle doesn't want to be seen as just a role-playing two, though, recently stating, "I feel like my true position is a point guard. I feel like the past couple months I had to sacrifice for the better of our team. It worked out for us, so it's not anything to harp on or be better about." Castle has made it clear by these statements that he isn't content on being a peripheral piece in the NBA and he wants to be the guy running things, with reports surfacing that he will refuse working out with teams who already have an established point guard. The question is, does he have the ability to actually do that? Or is he just an overly ambitious young player who needs to accept where he truly fits as a shooting guard or a small forward as a supporting piece? Today, we discuss the pros and the cons of Castle's game and see if he truly is a top-tier prospect at his desired position. So with that, let's get into it. Like seemingly every single prospect in this year's high lottery, Castle is not a great shooter. A bit of a side note, but it's actually insane how many guys in this lottery need shooting work. Sarr, Topic, Buzelis, Holland, Williams, and so on. Castle is no different. He was a poor shooter all throughout his high school career, consistently shooting less than 60% from the free throw line and less than 30% from beyond the three-point line. That has not really changed in college. He was an improved free throw shooter, I'll give him that, because he was at 75%, but towards the end of the year, he was shooting more like 90%. So definitely some improvement as a free throw shooter, but his three-point shooting was once again inconsistent, finishing the year at a poor 26.7%. I say it frequently, to be the type of player that Castle likely wants to be, a ball-dominant lead guard, you have to be able to shoot. Unless you're just a super athlete like prime Russell Westbrook that can just get to the rim at will, then maybe shooting isn't as much of a priority for that type of player. Castle is not really that guy. He doesn't have that level of explosion. He's a good athlete, but his burst isn't on that level. So in that scenario, the shot coming along is a major factor in the idea of him developing into the star and centerpiece of a team. Many others have mentioned that it's possible that it's some degree of a mechanical issue, as he has times during games where he looks great as a shooter and his percentage at the free throw line, like I said, got exponentially better throughout the year. Overall, the jury is still out on his shooting and what it could be. It isn't great now, but the shot looks fine and he has bursts where he can take over as a shooter, which are some good signs. I actually like Stephon Castle as a shot creator, even if the percentages weren't all there. A lot of people have shown concern with Castle and his shot creation, and while I can't particularly say I blame them, as he did only shoot around 26% off the dribble, but here's something to keep in mind when trying to determine if he's actually better at this than he seems. Look at the team that he was playing on. I mean, UConn was a powerhouse, and Castle was just one extremely talented freshman that found his way into a major role. That being said, he was never going to be a pure number one option on that team, with a number of talented and experienced upperclassmen, and he still found a way to make a difference and go on scoring runs as a self-creator. I almost see it as a player who would look entirely different in a more featured role. And people will ask the question, how is he supposed to be more efficient in a role that demands more of him? At UConn, he was able to pick his spots. Somewhere else, he'll have to take more difficult looks. And while that makes sense on paper, you have to consider the mentality of a freshman in his role. I can almost see it as a subconscious hesitancy there, thinking, oh, I'm not the first option, should I actually be shooting it here? Or, I don't always have the ball in my hands, would it be right to take a shot here? Or should I make a pass? In a more on-ball role with more experience, because experience comes in having to figure out those difficult questions as a young player, you'd hope that Castle would become a more decisive and confident player, and that alone can do incredible things for shooting percentage. A lot of my confidence in his shot creation game comes from what he showed in freeing himself up for shots this past season. Even when looking hesitant at times and not always making everything, Castle showed a deep bag of moves that indicate the ability to make something out of nothing. He had great footwork, a solid crossover, really good balance and strength. These are good bases to build off of, and he honestly just passes the eye test, which is a real thing. I'm confident in Castle's ability to create for himself at the pro level, and I think he will develop that to the level it needs to be. Now, finishing is an aspect of Castle's game that no one really questions. Castle is a good finisher at the rim. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but his ability to finish through contact comes from his strength. He's a really strong guard, fights through contact, and is a strong finisher with both hands. Additionally, even though I mentioned he isn't an extreme athlete, he is a very good one, especially when it comes to getting to the rim. His mix of size, length, and solid vertical athleticism has lent itself to some really solid finishes over the defense. It isn't just finishes right at the rim either. He really likes the floater runner game, and I could see him consistently going to that at the NBA level as well. What we were really able to see at UConn this year too is he really excels as an off-ball cutter and finisher. If he played on a team that needed him on ball more, we wouldn't have seen his level of production as an off-ball mover, which he truly does a good job at. And it's a valuable skill to have whether you end up being a ball dominant player or not. Just ask Steph Curry how important off-ball movement is for a guard. All in all, his best, most refined skill as a scorer is currently his finishing, and he should be able to continue to do it as a pro. So playmaking is obviously a key for Castle, as he's a track record of playing a lot of point guard at the high school level before fulfilling a more off-ball connective piece role in college. In clearly establishing his desire to be a point guard at the next level, Castle is declaring that his playmaking game is high level and he has more to show as a playmaker than we saw at UConn. It's hard to make a clear declaration on how his playmaking will translate to the NBA level, as the last time he operated as a true number one option at point guard was as a high schooler, a far cry from NBA level decision making. That all being said, if you look at what he did show at the college level, you can see the promise that he should have as a playmaker at the highest level. He showed great vision to find his teammates, great anticipation, great delivery, so on. I wouldn't consider him at the upper tier of playmakers at the point guard position in this draft. Someone like Nikola Topic or even Reed Shepherd are much more likely to be better overall playmakers. They have more experience doing it, they're more natural point guards, but Castle is certainly good enough at finding his teammates to be a valid and valuable point guard as a pro. A calling card of Castle's, defense is probably the main reason he was frequently on the floor for UConn and how he earned his spot in the first place. He's a focused and competitive defender that does well at the point of attack and staying aware off ball as well. He should be ready to come in immediately as a pro and be a difference maker on the defensive end. Oftentimes, when rookies come into the league and struggle to carve out a role or play as many minutes as they likely would want to, defensive shortcomings are the reason for that. Castle doesn't have those defensive shortcomings. You probably don't ever want to put a rookie on the opposing team's best player, but if there was a rookie you could probably trust to do it, it would be a rookie with the competitiveness and physical traits of Stephon Castle. Teams are probably looking at him as a player who already has a firm defensive base that they can trust to put him on the floor, and they just have to hope that he can get that offensive game to come along a little bit more, and you could be looking at one of the highly coveted two-way stars that everyone wants to have on their team. Comparisons are hard for Castle because he really is a player who has a lot of good traits, but very few elite ones. A lot of people have been saying Bruce Brown, which is certainly reasonable, but I'll give more of a high-end ceiling comparison, and that would be the Spurs version of DeJounte Murray. Now, they have their differences. Castle is more of a bulky guard, where Murray is more finesse, but they have a lot of similarities in how they play. Both did a bit of everything on the offensive end, while never being an exceptional shooter. Murray did most of his damage in the mid-range and interior, which is where I project Castle to do his work. Defensively, people consider DeJounte flawed now, but I think a lot of that is unhappiness with the Hawks. With the Spurs, he was a very solid defender. I see Castle as much of the same, a well-rounded, consistent performer that does a little bit of everything and has the talent to be an all-star level player if all things go right. In conclusion, in a draft like this one, a player like Stephon Castle is an interesting gamble to take at the top end of drafts. He's established as a winner and a player who has success at just about every facet of the game that he's been asked to produce in. Whether it's a smaller, more supporting role like he performed at UConn, or the more ball-dominant role he operated in high school and he hopes to operate in at the pro level, I see Castle having a high chance of success. Many see him as a player with a questionable floor. I really don't see that. I think Castle, based on what he has done throughout his career, is the type of player that finds a way to contribute in any way that his team asks him to. If he doesn't become a high-end performer, I have high confidence that he'll still be able to produce in a supporting role for whatever team drafts him. What about superstar potential? I want to say that he has it. There's a lot of things to like: the way that he moves on offense, his confidence, his winning pedigree, and so on. He even has the star name factor. Stephon Castle just sounds like a star. You can't tell me the name factor isn't real. If he was named John Smith, I'd be less high on him. But no, in all honesty, I think the star potential exists, but one thing that scares me is he doesn't have one standout skill. That typically is a big reflection of becoming a star. You have one thing that you can project to be elite at coming into the NBA. Look at all the major stars. For all of them, you can pinpoint one specific trait or skill they had that was special even as a prospect. Castle doesn't really have that. That to me caps his likely outcome as like a borderline all-star. Maybe he makes it a couple times, but I don't think I see him as a perennial dominant force. But like I said, he's a great competitor, great winner, smart player, and he does a lot of things right. I'll never rule anything out for him, and any team in the lottery could realistically justify taking the gamble on him. With that being said, I will conclude this video. Had a bit of a lull in video releases recently with a lot of business going on in real life, but hopefully we're back on track and can continue to pump these scouting reports out coming into the draft in about a month. But thanks to everyone for watching, and hope you all enjoyed this one. Hey, thanks again for watching this video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click on one of these videos here to see more.